The Cincinnati Bengals and Trey Hendrickson have still yet to reach an agreement on a new contract. This has been going on for quite a while. And, Trey Hendrickson is a guy who has been super productive in every stop in his league. He is north of 30 years old. And now it doesn't seem like they're any closer to a deal than they were way back in March. So, now it seems as such as that the Cincinnati are in a situation where they're fielding offers for Trey Hendrickson. It's a couple of weeks left until the regular season gets underway. And Ian Rappaport from ESPN and also Tom Pelissaro reported Sunday that Hendrickson could be available. And look, man, if the team is able to find a buyer to match their offer and a hefty price tag, then they'd move him, right? It just makes business sense for the Cincinnati Bengals, who clearly do not want to be in the Trey Hendrickson business for the price that he's asking, right? Now, the thing is, what do you think they're asking, right? Now, from what I'm understanding, there are three teams that are involved. You have the Colts, you have the Cleveland Browns, and the Carolina Panthers. And an in-division trade with the Browns is not likely, so you can kind of take them off the table. And they said there's a dark horse team, right? Now, what I'm hearing that the Bengals are asking for is draft compensation and also a player, right? So, listen, Mike Brown has been notoriously cheap as an owner. He doesn't really back a lot of mega contracts. They have a lot of money wrapped up into their wide receiver room. They paid Jamar Chase, and they also paid, Joe Burrow. You know what I'm saying? They paid T. Higgins. So, a lion's share of the Cincinnati Bengals salary is tied up into these players. So going forward, what would make the most sense for the Bengals, and what will be a team that would kind of be a team that can kind of meet them where they stand and actually has a need there, right? So it got me to thinking. Now, when the Micah Parsons deal became a thing, a lot of people try to pair Micah Parsons with the Raiders, talking about how devastating our pass rush could be if you compare, a Micah Parsons with the Max Crosby, right? But to me, that was a little unlikely, right? Because the salaries, the fact of what you'd have to give up, and the fact that we're in the infant stages of building something really significant, right? But I got to thinking, right? The Raiders really don't know what they have in Malcolm Kuntz at this point. They don't know what they have in Tyree Wilson at this point. It looks promising, but they don't really know, right? They lost Christian Wilkins. Now, it was a big piece. Now, there are a lot of people that feel like that was addition by subtraction, but essentially this team was built around having a Max Crosby, having an Adam Butler, and having a Christian Wilkins when they first really sat down and thought about how they were going to construct his roster, right? And to be honest with you, we don't know what we have in Malcolm Kuntz. We don't, right? We would like to think that we have a devastating pass rushing duo. We would like to think that Malcolm Kuntz is going to perform above and beyond what he did previous to him getting injured, but we really don't know. And the thing with a guy like a Trey Hendrickson, this is a guy who most of the time performs up to the back of his baseball card, right? So getting back to it, what it got me thinking about is this a move that the Raiders would actually make? Is this a move that makes sense? A lot of times when you hear the rumors about where these guys are going to go, it's never the team that the rumor mill kind of spits out. It's always a dark horse team. And I think that the Raiders could possibly be that kind of a team. Now, let me tell you why. Malcolm Kuntz is in a situation where his deal is almost up. He's going to the last year of his contract. The Raiders are trying to figure out and make heads or tails about what's going on with Malcolm Kuntz and what they're going to do with Malcolm Kuntz, right? And I'm going to be honest with you. He's a young pass rusher. So that could be the player that would kind of, pique the interest of the Cincinnati Bengals. Also, the Raiders have the cap room to accommodate a deal with a player that is going to be north of 30 years old. So the asking price for Trey Hendrickson is not the same price point as a Max Crosby or a Micah Parsons or a Myles Garrett, right? Even though the production is close, he is a guy that's north of 30 years old. He'll be on his third football team. And I don't necessarily see it being an astronomical asking price from a contractual standpoint, right? And I think this move is a realistic move for the Raiders. I do. Now, am I all in for the youth movement? You guys, people who watch me, you guys know I am normally in for the youth movement. But in the situation that the Raiders are in a tough spot because, you know, we're coming off of a 4-13 season. You have a new head coach, new GM, new energy in the building, new quarterback, new running back, wide receivers all over the place, a young stud tight end, and a ascending offensive line. And the one thing that people thought with this Raider defense is that is the one group that you would be able to kind of hang your hat on, right? And it is not looking like there's any definites on that defense, right? Besides Max, there's no definites, right? And what Trey Hendrickson would provide is bookends from a pass rush standpoint to make this defense at the very minimum a middle of the pack group, you know. And listen, do I like Malcolm Kuntz? Yes. Am I saying that the Raiders should definitely make this move? No. But what I'm saying is that I can understand it. What I'm saying is that it makes sense. What I'm saying is that is there a framework to make this realistic? Yes. And am I saying that this is something that the Raiders should look into? Absolutely. I think the Raiders should look into this. Absolutely. That they should, because, you know, when you talk about Trey Hendrickson, and we're going to get into some of his numbers really quickly. Now, if you look at the stats, man, they speak for himself. Now, this is a guy that came into the league in 2017. It's not quite in his, you know, he's going into his 8th year in the league. And, you know, well, 9th year in the league, excuse me. But it's a guy that has been super, super productive throughout his career. You know, the first 2 years of his career, you know, he didn't really kind of make a dent. But from his 3rd year on, man, this is a guy that started to bubble. Now, 2019, he had 4.5 sacks, as you can see, but 2020 was the year he really got on the map of the National Football League with the Saints, 13.5 sacks, with the Bengals, 14 sacks, 8 sacks, in 2022, 17.5 sacks the last 2 years, 23 and 24. So this is a guy that's been at the top of the league, as far as from a pass rusher's perspective. He's 30 years old, right? And to me, it just makes sense, right? Still has a lot of football left in him. And, you know, when you start talking about, you know, how healthy he's been, now this is a guy that, you know, 2017, he had a pedal ankle sprain. He missed 3 games. And then in 2022, he had a wrist fracture and missed 1 game. So he's missed a grand total of 4 games in his career. You know, he had a neck stinger and a concussion, you know, in 2022. But this is a guy that's been healthy. This is a guy that, to be real with you, is durable. And this is a guy that, man, you know, can really, really, really enhance this Raider team, man. And I, you know, I think if I were the Las Vegas Raiders, man, I would definitely, you know, look into this. But definitely look into this. Now, listen, when you talk about Malcolm Kuntz is everything that's right with what the Raiders are building, right? And I'm not trying to run him out of town. But if we're being honest, Pete Carroll is an older gentleman. He's here for a good time, not a long time. And I think if the Raiders are going to turn this thing around, they have to get as many definites in the building right now within the next 2 years as possible so they can really make a run at this thing. But guys, listen, that's my thoughts on Trey Hendrickson. Let me know what you think in the comments, man. If you agree, if you disagree, let me know. You know, we're going to discuss it on our next live. But, you know, I really, really want you guys to think about this. Do you think that the Trey Hendrickson thing is something that the Raiders should pull off? And before I go, what I want to do is I want to kind of look at the framework of what a Trey Hendrickson contract would look like. Now, Trey Hendrickson is currently making $21 million average salary a year, you know, $8 million guaranteed, you know, and he's right around kind of the middle of the pack when you start talking about edge rushers right now. When you look at where he would probably be slotted now, you know, TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, Danielle Hunter, Max Crosby and Nick Bosa are the guys that, you know, are making a crazy amount of money, right? Josh Allen is another guy, 28 years old, you know, franchise cornerstone guy, is making a crazy amount of money. Brian Burns is probably where you would see Hendrickson move up, right? He'd probably be in the $28 million range per year. You know what I'm saying? And to me, that's worth the risk for the Raiders, having so many rookie deals on the books, having Max Crosby on the books, and actually getting some of that money from Christian Wilkins voided off of their books. You know, to me, this is something that can actually work, especially if you were to move Malcolm Kuntz, because then now you're not saddled with trying to figure out how to make that work if he does have a good deal and he's a young player that they can slot right in there in Cincinnati, and you know, they can kind of figure that situation out with Malcolm. But guys, listen, like I said previously, if you like what you see, you like what you hear. If you don't, if you want to just argue, I don't care. But do me a favor, hit that like, hit that subscribe button, and let me know in the comments what you guys are thinking, man. Raider Nation Unlimited. I'm your man, Wasted. I'm out.